In one of the deeper parts of the circled cities stood a quiet little house. It had a green front garden, a bird-drinking fountain which was often circled by crows, a clean and lovely exterior. Yes, it looked absolutely adorable. If it wasn't for the fact that huge skyscrapers and gang violence are constantly happening just past its picket white fences. It looked very much out of place, like a Studio Ghibli witch hut in the middle of Detroit. Of course, any demon who lived in a place such as this was either insanely powerful, insane, or both. And that's why Alastor, the radio demon, was going out of his way of approaching it. Smoke was coming out of the house's chimney, indicating that its resident was present. He crossed the stone path quietly as he headed towards the main door, making sure to not touch the green grass around him. A rose bush near him shivered ever so slightly, as if wind was brushing through it, even though the weather was calm. Alastor scoffed, summoning a shadowy tentacle and punting the plant, causing it to whine like a cat. The radio demon then stopped in front of the door, a hand on his chin as he inspected it. It was painted in a dark red, its peephole moving ever so slightly, as if it was an eye. Confidently he smiled. He knocked somewhere between the door's eye and the mail slot, which was suspiciously high up. For a moment, there was silence. Only the noises of demons shooting each other in the neighborhood could be heard. And then a voice called out from behind the closed door, which then unlocked and opened on its own. "Good boy," was the first thing Alastor heard. This compliment, of course, wasn't directed towards him, but rather the door. You were sitting at your table in the middle of the room. Your place was quite cozy. Beige stone walls with dark brown wooden supports, charred wood as dark flooring. A large oven crackled in the corner with a tea kettle standing atop of it. Various herbs and spices were hanging from the ceiling, going from thyme to rosemary to garlic. A trapdoor at the opposite end of the room led to the basement where the bathroom and bedroom were located. Bottles filled with various liquids were lining various shelves. It seemed like a place ripped out of time and space, it seemed. The only things that didn't seem to fit were two electrical outlets which both a television and a computer were connected to. "Alastor," you purred. "It's been a while." I counted. 7 years. "I thought you died." You smirked, knowing how much he liked your smile. Your name in this world was Wick, a short form of Wicked. Outwardly had the appearance of a dainty little human, though that was just as fake as everything in your cottage. You were a stain. Exceedingly rare demons in all circles of hell minus the deepest of pits, where your kind was in a constant war with each other. Stains had the ability of mimic creation, meaning the power to give life to objects. The creatures were exceedingly violent to anyone but their creator, but they listened to your commands. There were few yet important requirements when it came to mimic creation. For one, they needed to be made out of powerful enough materials, as their teeth were heavy and strong, so something as flimsy as a paper bag didn't make a good monster. Additionally, you needed to be physically capable of lifting the item to turn it into a mimic. Their lifespans were short as well, only 6 months. But they could procreate, which, while their babies had less loyalty towards their master, they lived twice as long. Your rose bush, for instance, and even the green pasture outside, your home, it was all plastic, all fake, all mimics. They were your home defense after all, devouring any riffraff that would bother you. Even the rocks of the path outside had devious little mouths and tongues. If they weren't used to the taste of Alastor's shoes, they would have tried to slow him down. Alastor, though, well, he was a very welcome guest. The biggest limiting factor of mimic creation, however, was that creating them was exhausting, each new creation putting just a little more strain on your body. At the moment, your limit was at around 20 mimics per day before you had to sleep. Alastor closely inspected the room around him, and it revealed that, with the exception of the TV and the computer, every piece of furniture, every little decoration was alive. Tiny yellow eyes peeking at Alastor, their small mouths quivering with hunger ever so slightly. Even the chair you were sitting on was hanging out its tongue as its eyes ogled at the radio demon. "What brings you here, Al dear?" you asked. You were dressed in primarily red colors. Red and black checkered boots that reached up to your knees, a red and white skirt barely covering your upper thighs, and a tight, revealing red corset. Your scarlet red hair was contained only by a tattered red hood. 2 yellow glowing pinpricks just above your head, indicating that the hood itself was a mimic as well. Your right arm, the same colored red as your clothes, looked sinewy and leathery, with long, sharp black fingernails that glistened in the light. A second mouth was located in your palm. It had sharp teeth and a long, luscious tongue, though you couldn't speak from it. Tasting and eating from your arm, though, was possible. It was the only place on your perfect physique that could be considered unsightly.
"Wig, glad I caught you at home."
You tilted your head. "Well, actually, I was thinking of going out today. You know, since the extermination will be here soon, I want to take a stroll around the neighborhood." "Ah, well, come sit, I insist." You pointed at a second chair. It licked its lips as it eyed the radio demon, causing it to be kicked by you against one of its legs. "Oh, behave," you ordered. The mimic then whined, closing its eyes and mouth to appear just like a regular chair. Alastor's smile widened. "I rather stand." You chuckled. "Sure thing." Only a slight hint of malice was in your voice. Alastor could tell his refusal was upsetting you a little. He then cleared his throat.
"Wig, I have come because I have a job for you."
You raised an eyebrow. "Aw, really? And what makes you think I'd be willing to work for you after you just up and left?" Alastor snickered and snapped his fingers, a contract appearing on your table. "Oh yeah, I almost forgot that." It was an unusual contract, its only writing being the words "Wicked" and "Alastor" at the top. Below were various scratch marks indicating numbers. Alastor wasn't insane enough to dare make a contract with a stain, nor were you ever desperate enough to sell your soul to anyone. As such, you mutually agreed on one day to do each other favors, with the goal of always staying in balance. Together you had caused a lot of mayhem over the decades you had lived in hell. And sure, while he had zero romantic interest in you, you were head over heels for him, which he gladly abused at any chance he got. Even if it did mean occasionally suffering the consequences of your never-ending lust. As he could tell by your pose and constant lip-biting, that you were just waiting to propose some hedonistic activity as a favor. Well, Alastor, you said after counting the scratches, it seems we're pretty equal, so I'd like something in return.
Of course, I know you're awake.
He then began to reluctantly unbutton his jacket. You grinned, licking your lips. Oh, you mused, before quickly making a scratch on the paper. He stepped closer to you, placing both hands on your shoulders, his claws gently massaging your shoulders. You moaned. He had always such a tight grip.
I need your help with some heavenly business, Wick, darling.
He whispered right in your ear. What? Fighting angels? You groaned. It was thanks to your blasphemous power of giving things a sort of life that angels really wanted your head. Problem was your ability keeping you safe most of the time. Very rarely did you actually have to run from them. Alastor pinched your shoulder deliciously, and you shivered in delight, your neck getting goosebumps.
Not just fighting them.
His tongue rolled out of his mouth, gently licking your earlobe, making you hum. By now he had played with you so much he could use you like an instrument. The only time you had ever slapped the radio demon was when you realized he had been fucking you in a way that made your moans come out as the Toreador March.
We will kill them.
Your body shook.
Oh, darling, did you really just finish?
You exhaled out of your mouth, grabbing his chin with your right hand, using your second tongue to lick over his salty flesh. Almost, Alastor, my love. You need to warn me before you say something so arousing. You kissed his cheek, leaving behind some spittle. You knew how much he hated it when you left behind liquids on his body. His eyes narrowed at you. How about you describe exactly to me how we kill them while you're inside me, Alastor?
Well, there's much we have to discuss. But you're taking the words right out of my mouth, Wick.
Your meeting with the others at the Hazbin Hotel was quite entertaining. Vaggie and Charlie, the only ones who could immediately tell what kind of monster Alastor had invited. Though the realization of who Vaggie once was what kept you entertained. As on the night she had fallen, she had very temporarily hunted you. So she knew of your combat prowess. And it only had taken her 5 minutes of one-to-one combat for her to change targets. So in a way, it was thanks to you she eventually fell that night. Of course, teasing her with that fact was absolutely hilarious. Especially when you gave her spear a new pair of teeth that barked at her throat. Sadly, though, you had to unalive the young mimic rather quickly to avoid more infighting. It was 2 days later that you stood at the front line with the cannibals hired by Charlie, ready to fight the angels. Dressed in a mimic fight plate armor. It was super tight, and very obviously designed to be hot rather than practical. As not only your midriff was exposed, it also was a heavy case of boob armor. A little uncomfortable too, but damn did it make you feel confident. Though considering that the overzealous angels wore only very basic chainmail themselves, it meant that at least the fight would be fair. At least until you touched them, that is. The armor was covered in black slits out of which the mimic's eyes were peeking out, every plate being its own creature. Countless pervy tongues were gently licking all over your body in a rather delectable manner. You were holding a shield made out of divine metal. It was a weaponized shield, so it had 3 deadly spikes coming out of its lower end that you could use for stabbing. Not that it needed those, of course. After all, it had a large, dangerous mouth with hundreds of long teeth, which also just so happened to be made out of the same divine metal. Salvia was covering the shield as it couldn't help itself but lick over its own surface. The little guy really wanted to be shiny after all. Your right arm was unarmored to allow you to use your ability on the angels. With bated breaths, everyone stared up at the sky. The clock of heaven's embassy ringing. "Get ready!" shouted Vaggy. You licked your lips as a yellow portal opened above you. The first wave of angels shooting through it. To test if victory was even possible, Alastor allowed a clash to occur with the first wave before casting a powerful shield spell, keeping out the next few attack waves. Ah, what a massacre this was! Around you, demons and angels alike were spilling their blood, while all you did was dance around the battlefield, slamming your shield into stomachs, faces and backs, while also skillfully touching anything your little hand could get its fingers on. The angels clearly were not used to demons actually and successfully fighting back. This magical carnage was fueled by knowledge. The knowledge of divine weapons being just as deadly for demons as it was for angels. In hindsight, it should have been obvious all along, but when an enemy was armed and you weren't, resistance was often easily crushed. It was all thanks to the overlord Carmilla Carmine, who had spent decades collecting angel metal, that this was now possible. Sadly, though, the woman was disgusted by your mere presence. As such, you didn't get to personally thank her. Your shoulder blade beat into your shoulder, causing you to look right. After all, they had more eyes than you. An angel was diving towards you, spear aimed at your exposed navel. You allowed her to land. "What is with that sixth sense of yours?" she hissed. And you giggled. Thanks to your mimic signaling how to dodge, you had been unharmed this entire time. Sadly, though, you knew by the time the fight was over, you'd be covered in salvia and bite marks from your little servants. Not that you minded it that much. You held up your shield, causing it to bark at the angel. Disgusted, she took a step back. "Gross." You giggled in response, taunting her with your free hand. Come on, baby. Don't tease me. Come get me. The angel was armed with both a spear and a sword. It was easy to dodge her attacks thanks to her ever-vigilant mimics, but then they, and you for a matter of fact, fell for a feigned attack, the sword slashing at your tummy. But not a single drip of blood was coming out of the wound. Instead, teeth shot out from it, and 3 long tongue-like tentacles wrapped around the angel's weapon, ripping it out of her hand. What are you? You giggled. Surprised? Multiple tiny mouths and eyes appeared all over your exposed skin, threatening, glowing, licking, and spitting. But for only a moment. The angel was horrified, yet still determined. She lunged forward with her spear. You sidestepped and slapped your hand on her helmet. For a few seconds, nothing happened. But she stood there, dumbfounded, practically unable to move. And then blood began spewing out of the sides of her head as her own mask had begun eating her face. She screamed, falling on her knees as she tried to remove it. But it was sucking onto her face like a leech. The angels and demons around you stopped fighting. They just looked at you, scared. What? You mused. What's wrong? Go on! Keep killing each other! You ordered. But soon you regretted these words as a loud explosion caused you to look up. Alastor's shield was breaking. Ah, shit. You looked over at the Hazbin Hotel. Alastor stood on the roof. You could just barely make him out. You wondered what was going on inside his head in this moment. But now, it was time. The second and third waves finally entered combat. Ugh. The following onslaught wasn't as much fun. Sure, one-on-one combat, always enjoyable. You were more of an intimidating kind of girl after all, but being forced to combat 3 to 4 enemies at once, that was pure stress. And annoying. That was until the hotel itself was destroyed as Adam, commander of the angels, clashed with Lucifer, king of hell, on the rooftop. No one knew where Alastor went by that time. Taking the initial confusion, you raised your right arm. It seemed like it was finally time for your ultimate move. You snapped your fingers, causing all the mimics you had secretly created throughout the entire battle to simultaneously awaken and attack. Almost all angels on the battlefield screamed in pain as their own clothes betrayed them. You watched the humiliated angels either fall on their knees, scream in pain, or bleed out on the ground. And then, one of them called for a retreat. You had won. You watched them leave through the portal. And then you fell on your knees, exhausted. Your casual limit of creating around 20 mimics a day was bumped up to a new record of somewhere around 100. Maybe even 200. The adrenaline that had kept you hyper-focused and awake was quickly leaving your body. Luckily, though, you didn't pass out. As the demons were celebrating. Meanwhile, you and a large group of others were brought to a tent next to the ruined hotel. Here were the wounded and the ones who no longer could keep going. You had removed your mimic armor. As expected, your entire body was covered in a thick layer of salvia and bite marks. One of Charlie's friends, the spider demon porn star Angel Dust, helped you get cleaned. So, how's running that thing? You smirked. Oh, it feels really good. You huffed. Thought so. But, Jesus, these wounds. Was it really worth it? You shrugged. I suppose better their teeth than angel spears. The spider nodded. Yeah. You know, when Alastor brought you to the hotel, I thought, yeah, just some poser, but you're cool. Thanks. You weren't used to such kindness from other demons. And then you shivered. He had started rubbing disinfectant all over you. So, just curious, what's your relationship with the strawberry pimp like? You mean Alastor? It's a mutually beneficial thing. I'm useful to him, he's useful to me. Huh, I see. Angel eyed your armor. So you think you could make some clothes for me too? You snorted. What? It looks cool. Sure thing. I'll do it. For the right price. If you want my soul, that's too late. You put a finger on his lips. No. I was thinking... maybe I could join your little hotel. After it's rebuilt, of course. You could feel Angel's lips perk up under your finger. And then he said, I'll talk to Charlie. After Angel Dust was done and said goodbye to you, you stretched yourself out. Thankfully, your body was a quick regenerator. Otherwise, you'd be bandaged up from head to toe. From outside, you could hear the repair works of the hotel. Dang. Did these goody two-shoes ever rest? Ugh. How they managed to have this stamina was a mystery to you, especially after a battle like that. Though, maybe you were just lazy. Through the tense interest soon arrived another interesting figure. Small stature, dressed in all white. Even if his clothes were tattered from the battle, he had a bit of a forced smile. Hello, subjects, he said with a faked happiness. Huh. It was Lucifer Morningstar, Charlie's father, fallen angel, king of hell. Through the tent's opening you could see Charlie peeking in. Clearly she had sent him inside. Lucifer despised sinner demons, such as herself, and it seemed like as long as Charlie was around, he tried to hide it. The wounded demons in the tent started shouting, "It's the boss! We fought well, didn't we? For hell and its glory!" Yeah, for hell and its glory, he groaned barely audibly. But as Lucifer looked back and saw Charlie pouting angrily at him, he was forced to continue his little visit. Lucifer, however, after talking to each and every of the wounded, he finally stopped next to you at the back of the tent. Since you weren't a cannibal, You were hidden behind a single cloth wall. And you are not a cannibal. You smirked. Surprised, my lord? Actually, yes. With a raised eyebrow, he looked behind himself. He had to admit he was quite disgusted by Charlie's choice of ally, even though it did net quite the victory. You're that stain that was prancing around the battlefield like you're doing ballet. Did I entertain you, my liege? Lucifer chuckled, and then thought of his next words. Well, I hardly had time to admire work, with Adam constantly being on my behind. But I suppose the few glimpses I got were quite impressive. Your armor hissed, causing him to take a few steps away from it. Behave! After all, he is our master. The eyes of the plates blinked curiously at Lucifer. Good boys, good boys. Now, stay down. That's an order. Lucifer forced a smirk. I admire a woman who knows how to control lesser beings. Oh, really? You mused. Miss Morningstar must be a tyrant then. Lucifer inhaled sharply through his mouth. What? Did I hit a soft spot? He scratched the back of his head in embarrassment. Well, truth be told, me and, Miss Morningstar, we're divorced. It's been 7 years now. A little confused, you told your head. Nah, that must be a coincidence. Right? You shook your head, and quickly added, Oh dear. My lord, would you like to talk about it? He looked at you. He forced a smile, but his lips twitched painfully. How about you get out of my head? You raised both hands defensively. But, oh my lord, I would never in my unlife would I ever overstep like that. I truly feel sorry for you, my lord. Lucifer looked away at the ground, thinking. Well, Charlie and Prim, his personal butler, did tell him to try and connect with other people, even though they were nothing but demons. And so Lucifer sighed in defeat. And so Lucifer sighed in defeat. At least you knew proper etiquette, even if it felt a little sarcastic and borderline seductive. I must say, my lord, you said finally after he went quiet. I'm surprised you even came. For all I know, the story is you aren't really fond of our kind. Smirking, you added, though I suppose the thought of losing your daughter brought you here. He blushed. Well, either way, it's our victory. Even if you think we are beneath you, my lord. We are comrades, united in hell. Cautiously, you tapped next to yourself on the field bed you were sitting on. And after a moment of hesitation, he actually accepted the invitation. Sitting down next to you. And then he admitted something. I suppose today is a day of change. Well, I never thought demons could fight united like this. Nor did I ever think a purge could be prevented like this with minimal casualties. Nor did I ever expect to meet someone as alluring as you. Lucifer was sitting so close to you that you could feel the warmth radiating from him. You could even smell him. Something between freshly mowed grass and lavender. And was that new cart smell? Strange, that were exactly your 3 favorite scents. This probably was thanks to his angelic origin. It was making you a little fuzzy. So, Stain, call me Wick. He exhaled, amused. Wick, tell me, what brings you here? You aren't a member of the hotel. Well, I was called as reinforcement. I'm quite powerful, I must admit. Yeah, I saw. Well, a little pride never hurt anyone. And I came as soon as I heard the call to adventure. It was fun risking my life for others for once. You smirked. Though he could tell that you were lying, but somehow he still believed you. Or more, he wanted to believe you? That trick with the mass activation of your little vermin, though. That was fantastic. He made an okay hand sign. Well, in war you don't remember every little touch you feel. I, on the other hand, did. So, Wick, what are you planning on doing next? I think I'd like to join the hotel. Lucifer blinked. What, are you disappointed, my lord? Well, I'm just thinking if everyone redeems themselves, I'll be alone here. You licked your lips seductively. That's what you've been waiting for. Oh dear, we can't have that. You pressed yourself against Lucifer, putting your hand on his chest. Would we? Your eyes met. Miss Wick, are you seducing me? Perhaps. Though you haven't pushed me away yet. Is it working? Well, it is. Grinning, your faces came closer. And then they met. Your lips touching. He was a little more cautious than Alastor. That's okay sometimes. Less demanding lovers were also entertaining. Or maybe he just didn't trust you enough yet to be more dominating. He took your hand. Quickly he felt the teeth of your palm. And confused, he looked at it. This was your chance. And with the most dirtiest expression you could muster, you whispered in his ear, My lord, did you ever had a hand job and a blow job at the same time? You whispered invitingly. No. A bead of sweat was running down his head. You nodded quietly with a smug grin. Allow me to show you, my lord. Meanwhile, outside the tent, Alastor snickered. He had listened in on you and Lucifer the moment he had entered. It was all going according to the plan you and him put together 2 nights ago, during your night of passion. Good thing the radio demon wasn't a jealous fellow, otherwise he might not have wanted to use you like this. But thankfully, you obliged him. You were a really useful little pawn for him. thank you for watching my video until the very end. But before I say goodbye, I would like to say a personal thank you to all of my darling butlers and darling stewards for being wonderful members of my channel. We have Anonymous Weep, Sleepy Town, Angel, Zachary, Nicodemus D, Ash Wisdom, The Tribute, and AJ Anime Girl. Your support is greatly appreciated, as well as the support of all of my wonderful darling mates. And again, thank you for watching and thank you for your support. Goodbye.